My name is Walter Mayer. I was born in Germany, March the 31st, 1926. I'm a very old man. And I'm a father, I'm a grandfather, I'm a great-grandfather, I'm a Jew, I'm a World War II veteran. I came here as a young boy of 12. In Germany, I lived in a city called Wiesbaden. But my fondest memories are from where I spent my summer vacations every year, which was at my grandma's. Now, my grandma, her name was Babette Mayer. My grandma lived in a little town called Bollendorf. Now, Bollendorf is on the Luxembourg-Germany border. My grandpa was in the horse business. Now, in those days, you got to remember, there weren't that many cars. So the horse business was pretty good. The farmers didn't have tractors. They had horses. Now, my Uncle Max was in business with my grandpa. They were both in that same business many, many years. And my fondest memories is the summers I spent there in this little town, and it was like still is like a little gingerbread town, and I had a lot of fun running wild in the streets. There wasn't that many cars, so we kind of ran wild in the streets, played in the river. I used to have to fish my cousin out of the river. He used to want to go fly in there all the time. It was Freddie and Kurt. And then my other cousins used to come visit when the same time I was with Grandma. Cousin Friedel and Helen, she kind of watched us, and because she was the oldest, had another cousin named Renee Lazarus that came from Differdingen, which is a little town in Luxembourg. My father's name was Carl, my mama's name was Netta, and they were both born there, of course, and they married in 1922. The rise of Hitler in 1933, he became Vice Minister of Germany. He was a dictator, and he took over the government. I did remember going to Hebrew school. They had me singing in the synagogue there, which later on was blown up. As far as the Nazis were concerned, being a child, the only thing I can remember is them marching all the time up and down the street. And I remember one time when they had SA, which is the brown shirts, stand in front of the Jewish stores and taking down names when people went in, so they wouldn't go into the stores, like boycotting them. And they had it whitewashed on the windows, Jew. My earliest remembrance before that even was after World War I. The French Foreign Legion occupied Wiesbaden. So I remember these guys with the blue uniforms with the red on the bottom that they folded back, and they were red, and they were marching in the street on Bastille Day, I guess it was. They had a camel, and they had a guy sitting on a camel with two big kettle drums. and had on like a leopard skin, and he used to keep cadence so that while they were marching, boom, 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 boom. That's some of my earliest remembrance. Also, I remember my dad and I going in the wintertime to a town called Erbenheim, which wasn't that far away from Wiesbaden, in a sleigh. And I remember we had this big, heavy stuff on my legs, like a rug. It's weird what you remember. It's hard to say. My dad was like, he was strict, very strict. He used to import woolens from England for men's suits. And every little town had a tailor, because every German had two suits, one to get married in, one to get buried in. At first, when they first got married, I think my dad was in business with his father in the cattle business. By the way, my dad was in the German army for 7 years. Not American, he was in the German army. It was called Reichsbund Jüdischer Frontsoldaten. My dad belonged to a Jewish war veterans in Germany, and we belonged to that, and the kids had a sports club where we did soccer and tumbling, I remember, where a guy bent down and you had to tumble over him, you know, and then two guys, then three guys. It was a lot of fun. The Nazis got more and more involved in against the Jews. They needed a scapegoat, of course, so they jumped on the Jews, gypsies, foreigners, anybody they could, to blame on them for the bad times that were going on in Germany. People were having a hard time working, having jobs. So times were bad. Hitler grew, and his strength grew. And my dad got warned. I was on vacation in Bollendorf. My dad got warned from a buddy of his that he was in the army with. Told him that he was on a list from the Gestapo. I think the guy worked at the police department, and he was a friend of my dad's, and warned him. So my dad packed up a couple of suitcases, left the house standing and everything standing, and just packed up a couple of suitcases, and my mother, and they came to Bollendorf. And in Bollendorf, they picked me up. I didn't know about it. My grandma said the night before, she says, "You better pack up, your mom and dad are coming. They're going to take you to your aunt's in Luxembourg and Diverdingen." I says, "Oh, that's wonderful." So I packed up my little suitcase, met him the next day at the railroad station, and we went to Luxembourg. Couldn't stay for very long. I remember my mom and dad crying that they left Germany. He'd been there all his life, and they didn't know where to go. Papa wanted to go to Uruguay because he says it's a new area and we have a good chance there and everything. And Mama talked him out of it. And she didn't want to go no Uruguay, and finally decided to come to United States. So my father's mother, 3 uncles, had moved to St. Louis before World War I, way before. And they were in business here. So that's what we did. We came, finally, was 1936 and 37, between 36 and 37. And I remember going from Differdingen to Belgium, where my dad had a sister in Liège, Belgium. And then from Liège, Belgium, he got tickets on a ship to come to the United States after he went to Antwerp, Belgium, to the American consul and got permission to come to the States. Papers, visas and stuff to come to America. We got tickets in Paris, went to Paris. I saw the World's Fair in Paris in 1937. I'll never forget. And I was a little kid. You know, I was 12 years old, 13. It was very impressionable. And we left Paris and went to Le Havre. And in Le Havre, we got on a ship, the SS Champlain. And we came to the United States. We lived in New York. I went to school in New York. It was November 1937. Now, that was in Harlem. And believe it or not, most of the kids were black. And I did not know about the prejudice that was going on in the United States. If you don't know about it, you don't do it. It's taught. Would you believe prejudice is taught? Really unbelievable, but it is. And had a lot of fun. I used to play with the guys on the cliffs of the East River, looking into Yankee Stadium, I think it was, and had fun there. And then we came to St. Louis. Decided to come here because my uncle Sigmund Falk, my Aunt Rosa, they had moved here about a couple of years before we did. And I went to school. I went to Hamilton School, then graduated at Soldan High School. I was 18 years old. The war was going on, and I was drafted in the Army. I spent about, not quite 3 years. I went to Camp Hood, Texas. From Camp Hood, Texas, I was shipped to Hawaii. I was a clerk typist, was my MO. Of course, I didn't know how to type, which is very typical of the Army. They make the butcher the baker and the baker the butcher. I worked at 10th Army headquarters, trying to figure out island hopping, what the next move was, and we went to Okinawa. And one of the guys, the colonels in the headquarters I was in fact, the same office, which was G3, was one of the president's sons, Colonel Roosevelt. I had a desk and in a cage. They had a cage, and I was on a desk in a cage. And there was a Marine guard at the door, and I got secret messages in. And I had to log them in a book by the numbers, you know. And then there was written on there where I should deliver them to the different offices. But I had to keep track of them. So everybody that got the secret messages had to return them to me. And I had to check them off the logbook when I got them. And the Marine Guard and myself went down to, this was a Schofield Barracks in Hawaii. They had a big drum, 55-gallon gasoline drum with the top cut out of it, and made a fire in there and put the secret messages in there and lit them and burned them up. And I remember, had to stir them around the ashes so nothing could be traced. And I did that for a little bit, and then I went to Okinawa on the SS Okanagan. I got a Bronze Star. We had, there was headquarters company, and we stood guard around the place. This was during the Okinawa conflict. And as I walked in guard one morning, I was on a night late shift. It was dusk, and 3 Japanese come up the road with their hands up like this. And they didn't have any clothes on. And they come up the road, and I said, "Halt, halt, who goes there?" They didn't say nothing, they just kept coming. And I hollered, "Captain of the guard, Captain of the guard." And all of a sudden, everybody kept running. And the Japanese guy in the middle went down, had a machine gun on his back. And the other 2 guys jumped on there and tried to shoot us. So I threw a hand grenade at him. And that was the end of that. And that was my only experience as far as combat really was concerned, except Shuri Castle and stuff like that on Okinawa. Did a little bang bang, and the war was over, and that airplane flew. We saw that airplane fly to Japan with the guys on it to sign the armistice, and they did that on the Missouri, battleship Missouri. Anyway, I went from Okinawa to Korea, and I spent close to a year in Seoul, Korea. There was a Russian colonel attached to our headquarters, and he had to go up past the 38th parallel. So I was in a Jeep. He was using our Jeep. And he had a driver and himself and me. And we went up to the 38th parallel, which was quite a long ways. And it was wintertime, and it was colder than hell. Oh, I've never been so cold in my life. Got up there, and that Russian train wasn't there. Had to wait for the damn train to come. Had to spend all night long in the cold in one of them open railroad stations, you know, with just the top, both sides open. And there was a little hut in there for this Korean guy that took care of the place. He had a fire going in there, and we tried to keep warm. The 4 of us hugging each other, trying to keep warm all night. Next day, the Russian train finally came, and the colonel and his driver went on it, and I took the Jeep back to headquarters. After I spent about a year in Korea, I finally came home, was discharged, and went to work. My dad wanted me to be a dentist, and I didn't want to be a dentist. And anyway, I was taking this pre-med, and I didn't really care for it, so I quit. Went to work at Brin Brothers, infants and children's wear. I used to package orders. And Helene, my first wife, was the secretary there. I worked there for a while, and finally they promoted me and told me to buy a car. They're going to put me on the road. Bought myself a new Nash automobile. And I was a salesman on the road selling infants and children's wear to shops. Well, anyway, they gave me a territory, Kentucky, Tennessee, and southern Indiana. I'm in this place in Kentucky, Hazard, Kentucky. Never forget it. Like all the little towns, didn't have motels in those days. You had a hotel, like a railroad hotel, with a light bulb hanging from the ceiling, you know. And I'm going in there, it was already dark, and I finally got a room next door to the tavern. They had a little hotel. And I says, where can I go eat? Oh, the best food in town is down the tavern. I says, okay. I go down the tavern, ordered a steak hanging off the plate. Beautiful. Baked potato and stuff, $1.99. I'm the only guy in the place without a gun. Everybody had their rifle against the bar, against the seats and stuff like that. In those days, it was a rough country. I didn't realize how rough. I wasn't getting rich, but I was making a living. I've always worked on commission. Never worked on getting a salary or anything. Always on commission. If I worked hard, I made more. Anyway, that's when I met my wife, and she didn't want me to be on the road. She didn't like for me to be out there with chasing broads. So I went, quit, and I found a job selling shoes, Famous and Bar. 6, 7 years, 8 years maybe. They promoted me at Famous and Bar. They wanted me to run the basement, the shoe department and ladies ready to wear the basement at Northwest Plaza, which they just had built. Did that for a while, and I says, listen to the boss. I says, I making less money being a manager of the whole floor than I did selling shoes. And he says, why don't you quit? And I says, okay. And I went to work for Bonnie Kempspick. And I sold chemicals, industrial chemicals, soaps, cleaning supplies, that kind of stuff. For 30 years I did that. The guy I worked for many years, Sam Davis, he was the most terrific salesman I ever met. He could sell refrigerators to Eskimos. And they wouldn't even know it. He was very good because that's one thing he believed in was they gotta like you. If the guy don't like you, he ain't gonna buy from you, no matter what you got. You could give away dollars for 15 cents. If the guy don't like you, you don't want to have nothing to do with it. Keep your nose clean, don't take any wooden nickels. No, I don't know what advice I would have. After that, I retired when I was 67 and a half years old. My wife died right after that, and I bummed around for a while until I found that woman there. What's her name again? Rosalie Cohn. We've had a wonderful relationship for the last 28 years. She has so many attributes that are so wonderful, and it's hard for me to really express how I feel about this woman. Honesty, integrity, friendliness. She's like another appendage. She's just part of me, that's all. Find somebody that you would admire and you can live with and have the same kind of mindset and are compatible. My first wife, I had 3 daughters. One of them passed away not too long ago. My oldest one, Gail. I have Nancy Mayer, who is a professor at UMSL, teaches ESL, English as a second language. And then I have Debbie Mayer, that's his mother. They live in Kirkwood. Well, you do the best you can because every father works from the seat of their pants. You know, there is no definite thing that you should do. You have to know yourself. You'll feel it. Have to take care of family. I've just tried to live a decent life, leave a good footprint on this earth that somebody could follow if they wanted, leave the world a better place than you found it. It's not easy being a Jew in any country because of the prejudice. There is a difference between people and ethnic beliefs and customs, and people that don't know about them, they resent it and they fight it. Believe in the 10 Commandments. If you follow them, you'll be a good person and you'll be good in this world and you'll be kind to humanity. I made a list the other day. I had visited over 20 countries in my lifetime. Rosalie and I, we traveled an awful lot. We traveled all through the world, all different places, all different kinds. How about the mountains in Switzerland? How about the Riviera, Venice, Florence, Rome, Paris, Canadian Rockies? It's gorgeous. There's a lot of places in this world that are just wonderful. My advice would be to do the traveling when you can, still can, and are young. To life, l'chaim. L'chaim, l'chaim, to life.